Hello, hello. Welcome. It does begin. We're going to have a great time. Still working on getting set up myself here a little bit. Good morning. Hello, hello, everybody. Excuse me. I'm glad to see you here. All right. Good morning. Hello. Good morning. Hello. Whoop. Gotta mute that. All right, so it is a little bit early. We're going to give everyone a little bit of time here to get started. Let me black out the screen for just a moment. Okay. I like having that there. Place that right there. And the same with this window. Here, I guess. All righty. Let's see. It's 11:18. So we've got plenty of time here. Let me leave that over here. I am going to pull over our web campus. Whoops. There we go. And then I guess, yeah, that's good enough. And it's maybe a little small. Make it look bigger so we can actually see it. Yep, that's good. And there's one thing I want to look at. Just like to see how many people we've got in the class, roughly, so I know that we can start talking about the important things. All right, looks like there's about 25 people we have. Looks like we're getting pretty close. It is 11:20, so we might as well get started then. So let me open up this. And hello, everybody. Welcome to CS 202, Section 1001 for Summer 2. This is a UNLV course, so you should be enrolled in this, hopefully. You should also have access to this web campus page. I just want to start by asking, is the stream quality okay? Can you hear me? Is the connection good? I can adjust, my microphone if I need to. Just let me know. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. So this is our format. Every day we're going to come on to Twitch, okay? And occasionally we will experience some technical difficulties. Sometimes Cox decides that it needs to reset my internet or something. So I can always see the stream quality. I'm always watching that. And if it goes bad, I'll usually wait for everyone to get caught up. Every stream that I do, I will save the video and I will upload it to YouTube afterwards. So I did send you that YouTube link. I'll send it to you again sometime today. Today we're going to kind of do an introduction. We're going to go over the syllabus quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I do need to bring up some kind of important things. We're talking about the Discord and all that stuff, and then we'll kind of get started with our CS 135 review. Yeah, so to start, my name is James Petrowski. I am a graduate assistant. I'm a graduate student here at UNLV in the computer science department. This is my third time teaching this course. So I'm not a newbie, okay? So we're going to have a good time. I kind of got the hang of this. I want you to know that I consider myself to be very friendly. You're always welcome to send me a message. Whatever questions you have, I don't mind. I will never judge you for what you might think is a stupid question. I know many of you may be transfers from other schools where CS or where the programming language that you learned is maybe not C++. I also know that many of us were probably remote for our CS 135 course. So if there's some stuff that hasn't quite, sunk in yet, I understand. This class is every day. Let's go ahead and pull up in the syllabus here. It's not actually on the syllabus tab. It's in the files tab. I'm very simple, okay? I use the files tab, the announcements tab, and the assignments tab, and that's it. So when you come to the files tab, you'll see that we've got all of these folders. So anytime you want to see the syllabus, you just click here, and then here it is. Now I may make updates to it, but I did triple check this, so we should be good on that sense. I'm not going to go over it here. I'm going to pull open the actual file so I can get a nice zoom in on it. But as you can see, we're going every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 11:20 to 12:50 p.m. All right, let's see here. I'll do my best to start the stream about 5 minutes early every time if you want to hop in and ask me a question or something. I know some people like to be early birds sometimes. I'm one of those people, so when I can, I'll get started early. I won't start teaching the class early, but I will be available for you guys about 5 minutes before class starts. Here's the Twitch link. You guys all made it, it looks like, so there's no problem there. We are hosting office hours. So the ones that I have right now are 1 p.m. to 2:15 every Monday, Wednesday. So even today, after class, I'm going to hop in the Discord, and I will be waiting there in that server. So let me show you how that works. Yeah, so I'm actually going to send you guys a link right now. The link is at the bottom of the syllabus, but I'm going to post it in the chat right now. If you all have Discord open, downloaded, go ahead and see if you can hop in here. Yeah, I was just about to tell you about Christine there too. So Christine just showed up here in the chat. She's our class TA. Okay, she also has some office hours. I believe they're, I'm going to have to post them on this syllabus. So that's the first change that I'll make. But maybe she can type in the office hours that she'll be doing there in the chat just so you can keep an eye out. It is an invalid invite. Okay, guys, let me fix that. Sorry about it. All right, let's try this one. How's that work? All right, looks like we got some people popping up here now. Cool, cool. All right, so welcome. Go ahead and join that Discord. Here are the office hours from Christine. I just found those. Yeah, she's just posting them now too. So Christine will be available on Mondays from 9 to 10 a.m., Thursday from 1 to 3 p.m., and Friday 6 to 8 p.m. So you've got kind of a wide range of options. I'll be on Mondays and Wednesdays. So the only day that you can't corner us is on Tuesday. But like I said, I'm very friendly. So send us a message if you need to schedule something. And I'll do my best, or we'll do our best to get you kind of some one-on-one time. So let's quickly talk about the Discord for those of you who maybe have not used it before. So this is kind of our server here. I wonder if I can make the view bigger. Yeah, that looks good. So this is a kind of oversized view of Discord, obviously, but you can see here that this is our server here on the left. And in here, we've got these two text channels, okay? So in the announcements, everything that I post on Web Campus announcements, I'll be posting here. So I'll tell you, if I have to make a change to a homework, if there's a change to a due date, all that kind of stuff, okay? So in the announcements, you'll see this. And usually I'll tag everybody, so you'll get the notification. Class discussion. Now this is like your text channel, okay? So if you guys ever have a question, and maybe, I'm not responding, or Christine's not responding, you can ask some other students some questions here. So this is just a public chat. Christine and I will answer questions in this chat as well, okay? So if you actually happen to have a question, chances are other people might have it too. So instead of, sending me a message right away, go ahead and type the question here, and then maybe other people can answer that for you. We'll talk about kind of the guidelines about Discord and the syllabus. And like I said previously, you're not required to download this software. Discord's not affiliated with UNLV. So if you are not going to use this, please just send me emails. And if you need to have like office hours with me, we'll do a WebEx call, okay? So Christine and I can do a WebEx call with you if you need. But otherwise, like I said, for the office hours, I'll actually just hop into this chat channel here. You can see that my name there kind of turns green because I'm speaking. And when we're in here, we can share screens. I can kind of look over your shoulder at your code and help you with that stuff. And stuff like that. So I'll just be hanging out in here, and if you ever want to come talk to me, just hop in here and get my attention. Depending on your question, we might do a private call, but if not, we'll just talk it out here in this chat. So that's our Discord. Like I said, I'll have to update this syllabus again with a good link. You guys are funny. Here's my email. Now, what we're going to talk about in CS202, we're mainly going to finish. We're going to finish our C++ knowledge. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in C++ that we still don't know. So in this class, we're going to talk about all of these topics here. Actually, a big focus of this class is to look at object-oriented programming, and that's largely how computer science works nowadays. Okay, so in the industry, you might be coding in C++, you might be coding in Java, C#, and a bunch of these kind of coding languages, and they're all object-oriented based. So this is kind of our main focus of this class. These are all of our subjects, okay, and you can see that I've split out the subjects with these little midterm markers to tell you that midterm 1 will be these first 4 subjects, and to tell you that midterm 2 will be these next 5 subjects. The final is cumulative, okay, so the final will be all over all of these subjects, including these 2 last ones that we'll talk about at the very end. So there's going to be 10 assignments. Okay, so I know this is a summer class and we're going every day, but to be good coders, we have to code. So I'll try to give you a week for every assignment, but the assignments are going to overlap. Okay, there's no way I can avoid that. It's about 2 assignments per week. In general, the assignments will be larger than the assignments you've done in CS 135. They will also be different formats. I will be creating all of the assignments, so I'm going to do my best to streamline them as much as I can so that we're really focusing on just like 1 or 2 of these topics. The final project will, of course, include everything. And so we'll talk about kind of how those grades work. As you can see here, the assignments are worth 50% of the grade, so please do them. You can't just pass this class by doing no assignments and only tests. Both midterms are worth 15% each, and then the final exam is worth 20%. So 50% exams, 50% assignments. We follow a normal grading scale in this class. But this is CS 202, so if you're a computer science degree, I think you're required to get above a 70% to pass this course. I'm not sure if that applies to non-computer science degrees, but if you are CS, you should or you need to get above a 70% to pass this class, just so you know. Here, all homework assignments will be worth the same amount of points, except for the final project. The final project is kind of on me. I like to put a little more points on that one to hopefully get some of you caught up if you fell behind. Now, the way I do assignments is when I post them, they'll be available for 6 or 7 days. The due date will be, for example, assignment 1 is due on Saturday night. I will give you 1 extra day to do it, but you can turn it in for late, like a late point deduction on the day after the due date. So I'll always give you 1 extra day to do the assignment if you absolutely need it. I do not deduct mega points for late, but I will deduct you at least 10% if your program is late. So please try to turn in your assignments on time. If you absolutely need that extra day, you can always take it. All assignments you're just going to turn into Web Campus, okay? So, log into Web Campus here. Let me see where I'm at. If you come to the Assignments tab, you'll see here it's posted. I probably have a different view than you do. I guess I could do Student View, but down here you should be able to submit it. Let me see what my student view looks like. I guess I could start the assignment, and I can upload my files here, okay? So you're welcome to upload text files, CPP files, zip files, tar files if you have a Mac, stuff like that. Okay, so this is where you turn in your homeworks. This is very important. So some of you may be coding on your own environment, okay? So I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But when you're doing your assignments, before you turn them in, please make sure that they compile successfully on either this server, which is Sally, or this server, which is Bobby. Okay? So make sure that they compile on those servers, because everyone's compiler might be a little bit different. And so in order for us to grade your assignments fairly, you're going to want to do this, okay? Please come to the servers. Now, in this class, I will do all of my development, all of my coding on Bobby, usually. You'll see me actually run it on Bobby. The benefit of that is you'll get to see me compile the code every time. So there should be no problems with that. You should know exactly what to do. And at least if I make a mistake, I'll be able to fix it on the UNLV servers. Now this is very important. Please listen to this. Some of you may have heard of this before, some of you may not, but there's a thing called MOS. Let's see, we've got a question here. TWG asks about cardiac. Yes, so let's see. I may have listed that somewhere. Let me check. There's quite a few servers that you can actually log into. Let me show you this. If you go to tux.cs.unlv.edu, you can see this is kind of like the, let me give this to you in the chat. I'll also put it in the notes for today. But if you go to this link, I think you guys can see that. This is like the computer science main webpage. So you can actually see all of the servers we have. So there's Bobby and Sally. Now these are the main purpose servers. Cardiac's for the operating system students, and Java is for the compiler students. But you know, if one day Bobby and Sally are, you know, throwing a fit and you can't log into there, you can for sure log into Cardiac as like kind of a last resort. Yeah, so you see Cherry here mentions that. So if you need to last resort Cardiac, feel free. Here, I will note this. If you're using a VPN, your own VPN, Bobby and Sally usually reject your connection. I don't know if you figured that out, but I know that every time I try to remote into Bobby, I need to like pause my VPN. Otherwise, it's like, no, you can't come in here. Here's some useful links, and here's some useful software. So I kind of want to finish the syllabus before we get into that part, but we'll come back to it. So back to MOS. Here's very important about this, okay? You guys, we have this server for student collaboration, so I want you guys to ask questions, okay? And if you have, well, let me reword that. I want you guys to ask questions, but some questions can be considered as academic misconduct. So if you're posting code that other people can copy, that's bad, right? So RCS says just don't post code. That's very important in the Discord server. If you're going to ask a question, do not post files. Do not screenshot your code. If you feel like you cannot ask your question without posting code, you can send it directly to me or directly to Christine. We're totally welcome as TA and instructor to look at your code, but you are not allowed to show your code to anybody else. Now, you're welcome to, you know, ask questions to each other, but you cannot work together to produce one solution. So all of the assignments that you turn in, this is kind of like a plagiarism check. Stanford did a research study, and they know how to compare programs. So I don't know if you have experience with this, but, you know, say your friend sends you their assignment, and you go into their assignment and change all of the variable names. You add some comments, change up the spacing, and you say, hey, this program looks different enough. I think I'll just submit it. MOS will catch that, and MOS will tell me that your programs are, say, 90% similar. And it tells me who did it. And so if I figure out that you guys basically copied, one person copied another, or you guys work together to produce the exact same code, I have to submit an academic misconduct report. Okay, so please don't work together to produce the same code. Please don't send your code to anybody else. I promise you I'll catch you. I've done it before, and every semester I catch somebody. So I really would appreciate if you just stay away from that and ask me questions, okay? I'm a resource to you. In any sense, you could abuse me, you know? Send me as many messages as you can, okay? I want you to pass this class. But I don't want you to cheat. So we have, you want to know what an example of a good question is? I mean, anything that's general, okay? As long as you're general about it. You know, you can say, hey, I'm having trouble getting started on this function. I'm confused about this part of this function, or what does this mean? You can say, does anyone remember what the function is to add something to a vector. Stuff like that. And so you'll kind of get some practice with it. If you're ever unsure, you can always message me or Christine on your own. Now there's this little part here. I expect your programs to compile. I know many of you will kind of work backwards on your code, and that you'll kind of generate errors and then use that to kind of help you get to the solution. Here's kind of my grading policy. Every assignment will have its own rubric, and there's a certain amount of points for certain sections of your code. So if your program happens to segfault, you still have an opportunity to get even maybe 95% of the points. Because we're going to go in and actually look at your code and allocate points based off of each little module. Now, I would strongly encourage you not to have segfaults so you know that your program works. But in the end, after you've submitted your code, we'll tell you where you lost points in your assignment. We'll say, hey, in main, during this section, you lost some points. We may not always tell you exactly what it was. If you're interested in knowing that, please reach out to Christine or I, and then we will explain it to you. We're busy people here. We're going to be teaching every day. So if I could, attach a whole document for each one of you telling you exactly why points were lost, I wish I could, but I've got other things that I got to work on too. So if you can't figure out why you lost points from our little note, please reach out to us and we'll talk about it. Here's some helpful stuff for when you're coding. Usually we'll give about 10% points for documentation and coding style, okay? So at the top of every program, please include this little thing. This helps us just in case we lose your name somewhere along the way. Your file will have your name in it, so that we can always reach there. Now, I'm picky about your coding style, okay? I'm not super picky in that, if you have your own little, I'm not sure what to call it, but your own little style, I'm okay with it as long as it looks nice. Okay, sometimes people turn in these programs, and I'll show you some examples, where things are tabbed all over the place and I can't tell what belongs to what. I don't like that. It makes it hard for us to grade your assignment. It also makes it harder for other people to read your code. And that'll come up when you're a professional. So we like to talk about, I guess, Acorn style. Let me see if I can give that a quick Google so you guys can reference that. And I always do Acorn style when I'm coding. So just watch me and you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, so you can actually Google Acorn style C++. There's whole documents about it, but I'll explain it to you today while I'm coding. So just be, conscious of your coding style, please. Now let me pull this back up. Now, here's what I say. All programs must have reasonable comments. So I'm not super picky if your comments are paragraphs or if they're just little one-liners. But there are some things in your code that will not be obvious to people. It may be obvious to you, but it may not be obvious to people. So if you kind of look at a piece of your code and you say, hey, that might not be so clear to somebody, add just a little one-line comment either to the side or above it, and that should get you full points for comments. You'll always see me kind of doing that when I code, but I give you this here for some guaranteed points. Add this to all of your functions. So if you're not really believing me or you're not really understanding what I'm saying now, just add one of these to all of your functions and I guarantee that you'll get full points for it. But like I said, you can kind of just add in those little one-liners wherever especially where it's not obvious to a stranger, and you should get some full points. As I said, 90%, the remaining 90% will go in this rubric that I mentioned earlier. I already kind of explained this, so please reread that if you need. But like I said, if your program, doesn't compile or it's seg faults, you could still get a lot of points for it. So always turn in something, even if it doesn't work. I did talk about the student collaboration already. I gave you the basics. If you're interested in reading the rest of this, you may. There's just lots of details in here. But to come in short, if you copy someone's code, if you upload something to Chegg, don't use Chegg. Or, if you copy-paste an answer from Google during the test, all of these things I can get you on some student academic misconduct, okay? If you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. Here are all the university policies. If you have a DRC request, please let me know so we can get that worked out. Final exams and stuff, I usually won't move them unless you have a DRC request. So just make sure that your schedule is open for most of, during this class time. If you have a conflict, I think one student already told me that they couldn't come on one day and that they'll have to catch up on YouTube, which is fine. So if you do have one of those, maybe I can work with you and I can try to keep the tests on, say, a Tuesday, Thursday kind of basis. Just send me an email if you need. Final exams, not the final exam, but all exams, they're going to require you to use Lockdown Browser. Now, I should change this. I'm not going to make you use a webcam, but you have to use Lockdown. So make sure that you have that downloaded. I'll give you a link for that, maybe in the announcements. And I will also give you a test exam so that you can log in and test how your Lockdown browser works. Okay? There's some more policies here. Let's see. So we've got a question. It says, will the exams include lots of live coding or are they normal question answer tests? So usually how I make my tests is there's I call it a hodgepodge of pretty much everything. So each section of code will roughly have 4 or 5 questions. So let me see here. So this section will have 4 or 5 questions. This section will have 4 or 5 questions. Pointers will, memory allocation and management will. And each of those, within those 4 questions, there will be an open response. That might be like a definition. I might ask you to tell me what something is. There will be some multiple choice question. And there will be a very small coding question. So I'm going to ask you to, say, allocate memory into a pointer. So those are the basic questions. At the end of every exam, there's one bigger programming question where I ask you to write a full program. So to answer your question, you'll get everything, literally everything on your test. Now it's designed so that you can complete it about in the time span. You will be a little bit pressed for time, but I also tell you how many points things are worth, so you can kind of prioritize based off that. In addition to that, exams will be curved. If everyone kind of does bad, I'll bring you back. I'll bring you all up a little bit. I always post the stats of the tests, stuff like that. So the next question here, let's see. Is the final just at normal class time or on the last scheduled day of class? So to answer that question, TWG, if you don't mind, I'll get back to you on it. This is my first time ever teaching a summer course. I've actually never taken summer courses before. So I'm not sure if it's like it is during the normal semester where there's like a finals week and they kind of allocate us a time spot or not. So let me get back to you on that and I'll give you an answer for that tomorrow. See if I can write that down in a note so I don't forget. And then our next question is, will tests occur during class time? So the midterm 1 and midterm 2 will occur during class time. Like I said, I think you might have, or I know some of you might have some conflicts, you know, if you're working and stuff, you can't come on certain days. Just send me an email to tell me what days you would really prefer there not to be a test. And maybe I can keep it on, like I said, Tuesday or Thursday or whatever works for you guys. But it will be during normal class time. I talked about the Discord. You can come here and reference this if you need. There's no posting code. Posting general solution steps, you know, that's kind of like pseudocode. Don't do that. But you should ask general questions, as I said. And you are all welcome to answer questions, okay? And if one of you happens to be, you know, a little misunderstood or wrong, I'll hop in there and give you some more information. I would really just love for you guys to use that public channel. I really want to encourage kind of a learning environment. I don't like, you know, people who think there are stupid questions. We're all here to learn, and there's some things that we might not know. So I know that every day I'm still learning, and I make a fool of myself all the time. You'll see me do it in class, I assure you. So let's just keep our, you know, our minds open. Let's ask questions if we need to. Like I said, if you don't know what type of question you have, please message me. And I said, remember, if you have a question, odds others may have the same question too. So if you ask that publicly, you can. Here's some public health directives. This is a remote class, so I'm not going to spend some time on that, but you can go there if you'd like. And that's going to wrap up the syllabus. Do you guys have questions on the syllabus? I'm going to update the Discord link here. I'm going to also update Christine's office hours. I'll include those up here. Oh, and we also do have a book. There's a free link here. If you're a textbook person, you can go here and read this book. Let me pull it up. Whoop. There it is. I give you all notes, and all of the tests are based off of my notes. So you do not need to read the textbook if you don't want to. But if you're kind of a textbook person, there's one here that you can use. I also recommend to you this one if you want to buy it. This is the one that we used for a long time. So if you want to buy a textbook, this is a good one as well. So that's that. I'll update this syllabus. I'll also put the final exam time on here, and I'll get that done by tomorrow. Please let me know if there's any questions, and I'm going to go ahead and move on from this part here. The next thing we're going to talk about is coding. How should you code in this class? Now, I'll tell you what I like to do, and I'll give you some options. Now, I will do everything in VS Code in front of you. Okay, so let's go look at that on Google. VS Code stands for Visual Studio Code. It's like a nice text editor. And Visual Studio Code allows you to kind of install extensions based off of the code that you're using. For example, C++. And it will color your coding statements. Variables have their own color. Objects have their own color. Functions have their own color. It really helps you kind of organize your code and know what things are, as opposed to just using like Notepad where everything is just black. So I would highly recommend using Visual Studio Code. Now, has anyone connected to Sally or Bobby before using the terminal? If you have, I'm sorry to tell you, but I cannot allow you to do that, or I request that you don't do that this semester. The reason for that is because Visual Studio, it kind of will allow you to debug your code given whatever environment that you're SSH'd to. And so what Visual Studio does is it kind of installs some processes onto our servers, and they bug up the servers. And so if we've got 30 people all using Visual Studio like Terminal Connect to our servers, the servers will start rejecting people. And then that's when you're like, oh, I guess I'll go to Cardiac because I can't get it on Bobby or Sally. So though I can't force you to do this, I would really request that you do not use this terminal function because you're going to bug up the servers and people aren't going to be able to log in. Especially when it's the night before the deadline. No one's going to be able to log in and check their programs. Yeah. So please don't use that. I will tell you what I use. Let's go ahead and pull open a notepad here. We'll talk about some things. So here, this question says, the problem is if you are in VS Code and try to connect from within the VS Code terminal. That's exactly the problem. So what you'll see me do here is I use VS Code. All I do is I save my files into my computer. And then whenever I'm ready to run them, I then upload them to the server using a different program. So that's how I do it. A part of me wishes I was there when they found this out. It was not fun. And then someone asks, is SSH through terminal on Mac okay? That is totally cool, and I'll tell you what I do for that as well. Yeah, so I'll tell you exactly how I do both of those. So I'm pulling up my little notepad here so we can all reference it. Some of you may not like this, but I always put my notes in Notepad. And I try to format them before I upload them so they don't look terrible. But I can't really color code my stuff. But at least I give you the notes all the time. So, as I said here, let's do that. So my editor of choice is VS Code. There's some other options. I'll just give you one, maybe Notepad++. Maybe Emacs, stuff like that. Now, how do I connect to the servers? How do I do that? I like to use MOBA Xterm. Now, this works only if you... I probably didn't do this right. How do I spell it? I guess that's how you spell it. If you're on a Mac, you can't use this program, so I'll tell you how you can use something else. So this is for Windows people. If you want to download MOBA X, come to Tux. Where's Tux? This page. And like I said, there's some useful software links here. Let me kind of super zoom in on these. Whoop, here we are. Okay, so here's the link for MOBA X. Okay, so you can get there if you need. But look, they give you a bunch of other options. Okay, WinSCP is great, but MOBA X is, in my opinion, the best. This is what I'll use every day in class, is MOBA X. Now, MOBA X will act as the terminal as well as SSH. So you'll just be able to directly upload your files through MOBA Xterm. Now, I'll talk about what you have to do on the Mac. I'm just kind of going off my notes here, though, so I make sure I don't miss anything. Here are all the servers. Let me do that. So Tux is just the reference page, right? So this is a website. This is not a server. But for these are coding websites. Whenever you connect to them, I'll show you how I do it on MOBA X, but if you're going to do it on Mac, I'll show you how to do that as well. You may need to include your username. Alright, so if you're on a Mac, here's what I do. If you're on a Mac, you need to use the terminal. And so if you're going to do that, then you're going to type something like SSH, your username, and then whatever server you're trying to get to. So we're going to say bobby.cs.unlv.edu. Okay, so once you type that, that will let you connect to the server using your Mac. But then you might ask, how do I upload my files? You may be able to use a command for that. I really don't like to do that. So I recommend that you use FileZilla. That's also a link here on Tux. There it is. So FileZilla is something that you can use on your Mac. And it just kind of lets you connect to Bobby, and you can upload your files into all the directories and stuff there, all your folders. So I'll put that here in the notes too. Okay, so that's if you're using a Mac. If you're using Windows, please use MobaX unless you want to do WinSCP, PuTTY, whatever you'd like. As long as you have a way to connect. So let's talk about compiling our code. If you guys, I don't know what you guys did in CS135. You might have done just a regular G++. We're going to learn some C++11 features in this class. So whenever we compile on these servers, we do G++-std is equal to C++11. And then whatever your file is, file.cpp. So that's how to compile. Put it in quotes. Now, if you want to run your code, we're just going to start with the classic /a.out. Later in this class, I'll tell you how to rename your files and all that stuff. But all you have to do for that usually is /a.out. And there may be a file here, right? There may be some file. So you'll see me run code literally every day. So you shouldn't be too worried about memorizing that because you'll see me do it every day. Okay, so let's go ahead and do an example of connecting to MOBA real quick. I don't really think I can zoom in on this, so please just, I'll explain to you what I do. I don't think I can zoom in on this very well. So just listen to what I say, and all will go well. So when you're on MOBA, you'll kind of pull up on this screen. And if you go to Sessions, up here in the top left, you can click on it, and we'll pull open this window. And this tiny little thing up here in the top left, it says SSH. If you click on that, it's going to pull open this new screen here, and it asks you what the host name is, and you can specify your username. So in this case, I'll type in bobby.cs.unlv.edu, and then I need to specify my username, and that's PIOTRJ1, but you have your own username. It's on port 22, so you'll just hit OK. You'll give it a moment, and if your VPN is turned off and everything went well, you'll see this screen. And now I can zoom in on this one. There we go. There's Bobby. So now we're connected to the server. Now you can see here on the left side, I've got all my folders. So if you're not familiar with Linux, I'll just tell you about the few Linux commands that I want you to remember. There's going to be CD. Remember, that stands for change directory. If you do CD ... that takes you home. That takes you back. Takes you back to root directory, or home directory rather. Magnum asks, did you have to enter a password? So MOBA has saved my information, unfortunately, so I couldn't show you that. But when you do this, it will tell you, it will ask for your password, and then it will kind of save it for the future. But yeah, it will ask for your password, and you will have to type it in. That's a great question. Thank you for pointing that out. If you don't know your password, check your emails, okay? And talk to CS Help Desk. They're kind of like an IT service. They are IT. So if you have any problems, look at this. If you are a CS student and need to account or a password reset, please click here. So you can kind of always contact them from this website if you need. So So let me kind of display that. So I always go into my test folder, right? So I'm going to change directory. Let me clear. I'll always go into my test directory. But say I want to go back, I went too far, I can cd ... and it's going to take me all the way back to my home directory. I'm kind of putting these in, well, I'm picky. You'll see me do this kind of silly notepad stuff all the time. ls list items in directory. So if you ever don't know what's inside of a directory, let's say right now I'm in my home directory. If I type ls, you'll see that I've got all of this stuff here. If I change to one of these directories that I can see, for example, here's my test folder. That's the one I always go to. I'll cd into my test folder, and now I'm there. And I say, hey, what's in this folder? I'll hit ls, and then I've got all my stuff in there. Now, if you're using FileZilla, or if you're using MOBA Xterm, you're going to be looking at all of your files on the left-hand side here. So you can kind of just click on those same directories. And whenever you want to upload files, for example, let's make these huge, extra large icons. So whenever you're in your folder and you want to upload something, you just come over here and you say, hey, go onto my directory. And then you'll see a little upload button there in the bottom left, an upload bar. You'll wait for it to finish, and then it's in there. You say ls and say, hey, there's my main.cpp file. Okay? So that's how I do all of that stuff. FileZilla works the same way, except it's not all in one program. You're going to be using the terminal alongside with it. Now that's pretty much it. You can always make directories, right? Make a folder if you want. You can move files. I'd say that's pretty much it. Another one you might use is logout. And those are really the only Linux commands that we use for now. So you should know those, or you should have had experience with those before in CS135. So now we're going to start talking about C++. It's kind of time for us to start that. Looks like we've got about 40 minutes left. So we're going to be able to get some good stuff done here. Let me take a sip of my water. And if you guys have any questions, please stop me and tell me. So first, let's start with some things that you're expected to know. And as I said previously, if you haven't taken CS135 and C++ wasn't your first language, feel free to let me know so I can help you kind of get caught up here. So what should you know? And if you don't know, maybe spend some time learning it. Well, we can even look at the first assignment for that. It will tell you. But to start, you need to know how to import some libraries, right? So what does that look like? I probably spelled that wrong. I'm a computer scientist. I'm not an English guy, but maybe I did. So how do we do libraries, right? So here we are in main.cpp. Whenever we want to bring in libraries, at the very top of our code, we'll type include, and whatever libraries we're working with. What's the library that we should always be working with? Do you guys remember? Yeah, include, you got it. And what's the library that we almost always include for our programs? IOStream, that's exactly right. So we usually do IOStream. Okay, so usually you're going to put that there. There's a few others that I always like to, not always, but if I know that I'm going to be using that kind of stuff, I always like to bring them in, and that's usually the string. I totally appreciate you guys typing in the chat. You make my day so much better when you do that. I'll always try to ask you questions. I love when you guys type in the chat, so thank you for doing that. If we're doing stuff with strings, I usually do this, and that's because I like to use this function called toString, and I'll talk about it later. And what else? We're going to be working with vectors. Do you guys know vectors? Is there anyone, I should ask this, does anyone not know vectors? Today we're going to be talking about them, and I just want to be aware so I can spend some extra time on that stuff. A vector is like, okay, that's good, thank you. So we've got one guy. All right, awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, so RC has kind of got it. That's a resizable array. Okay, so today we'll go over vectors. It's not going to be terrible. Okay, I promise. We're going to learn like 3 things, and you guys are going to be good to go. Synchro says, I'm better with arrays, but vectors are okay. Vectors are like arrays, so we're going to be good. The first assignment asks you to use vectors. We'll talk about that. And also, I do have a bunch of YouTube videos from last semester. If you want to watch those, you can. Like I said, I'm a goober, so I'm sure there's mistakes all over the place. But if you want to come ask me questions, of course, come to the class today during normal class time so I can answer your questions. But yeah, I do have all those videos available for you guys to see if you need some extra stuff. So a vector is like a resizable array. But we're not going to get there yet. We're just starting with our libraries, right? So those are our libraries. So we know how to do that. So what's the next thing that you should know? Well, you need to know that namespace thing, right? Unless you want to type std every single time you type cout. So after that, you usually type this thing, right? Exactly. Yeah, you got it. So that's usually the second thing we need to know. And then we also need to know how to do main. Main is how our programs run in C++. Main is the main function, right? Yeah. You guys are way ahead of me here. So next we need main. What type is main? Does anyone remember? What's the data type of main? It's an int. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's an int. Now, C++ is smart enough to know that you don't have to include this return 0. But I always include it because I'm old school. So we have a question here. It says, can it ever not be int? For this class, no. For this class, it's always going to be an int. Kind of the way this works is that we return some number. And if main returns 0 means like success. If we return a 0, the program ran with no problems. But if anywhere else in the program we return like a 1 or some arbitrary number 762, these error codes kind of they mean certain things. So that's kind of why this is why it's an int. Whenever we return 0, we say, hey, this program exited successfully. There was no problems. So that's the main thing. If you haven't coded C++ before, maybe you save this, take a screenshot or something. This is usually how all programs start. And in fact, if we save this and pull it onto Bobby right now, it's going to compile. All it's going to do is return 0. But that's fine. So we'll let it load up there. And I'm going to check to make sure it's there. If I ls, there it is. I see it. There's main. So I always like to clear. And then we'll type out our compile statement, g++ -std is equal to c++11. And then we'll type main.cpp. It compiled. There was no errors. So then whenever we're ready to run it, we'll just /a.out. But the program did nothing, right? So, what else are you guys expected to know? So let's just talk about some basic things. Okay? So one of the main things is going to be printing and reading an input, right? So if you guys have used cout and cin before, I kind of expect you to know how to do that. I'll give you plenty of examples of that if you haven't used that before. The next thing is probably declaring variables. I hope that you know how to do that. I also expect you to know some data types. Some of our favorite data types are ints, floats, chars, strings, doubles. I'll take the S's off. Right, those are some popular data types we've used. I expect you to know how to declare functions and use functions. I'm just type functions. In terms of functions, I also expect you to know the passing parameters. Let's kind of put this here real quick. What does pass by value mean? Does anyone have a guess? And what does pass by reference mean? All right, yeah, so pass by value, Bonky here says copies the memory. Yeah, so I'd say that this makes a copy of the parameter, right? Pass by reference uses the actual memory address and makes changes to it. So that's exactly what happens. So we'll talk about that today. I'll give you some examples, right? But passes the actual location of the variable. Right, the memory. Now I actually have a fun little thing here. People or my coordinator always recommends that I show this little image. So let's see if I can pull it up. You may have seen it before. I might have to open it in Edge or something. Let's see how that works. Okay, can you see this? I think so. I mean, I can check. So we've got two little coffee cups here, right? And so we have some variable cup, and we say, hey, it's equal to this. And so if we happen to pass by reference, we're going to pass this cup variable to the fill cup function, and it's not only going to fill up this one here in the parameters, but it's also going to fill up the original one. If we do a pass by value, it's going to make a copy of it. So if we call fill cup on it, this one is going to fill up, but the original one remains unchanged, okay? So I'll upload this to Web Campus. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, they always recommend that I show this. So this is a great example of how that works. Okay? And so I'll ask you kind of how we do that while we're coding today, if we do happen to get there. I'm kind of just, going over some other things right now. I love to see that. I love to see that. And then anything else? Well, really, you guys need to know how to do if and else statements. That's a big one. If you know how to do if else statements, that means you know about Boolean data types, right? Remember what a bool is. You also should know how to do while and for loops. We use plenty of those in this class. And then the very last thing I expect you to know is a struct. Okay? So these are all of the things that I want you to know. And I'm going to put here in with an asterisk vector. I'm going to spend some time today and tomorrow on vectors. Okay? So we'll talk about that. But pretty much, if you know where to go for these, you have some notes, or you remember this stuff, you should be good to go, okay? This is kind of where we're starting from. So let's get started with just vectors in general. Arceus asks, a struct is just a collection of different data types, right? Yes, it is. And actually, structs will make a lot more sense in about 2-3 days when we start talking about classes. And today, I'm going to try to go over structs with an example. I'll show you kind of what that does. But, say you take myself. I'm a person, right? So I have a name, which is a string. I have a height, which is, I guess, a float. I have a weight, which is a float. So I kind of compile all of these different data types into one object, and I call it, that's a person, right? So we'll talk about structs today, but yes, you're completely right about that. Terry asks, are we going to use more classes than structs? In general, yes, we will. And I'll tell you about when we use either one. And yes, structs within structs are a little confusing, but it's not too bad, I promise. So let's start with just vectors, because that's probably going to be the biggest thing. If you know everything else but the vectors, it's probably good that we start with this real quick, and then we'll move on to the rest of our review. So vectors come in a library. And that library is include vector. Now vectors are math, right? I don't know if you guys took physics, but if you did, or calculus, vectors are a way to represent something for math. I'm a computer scientist. I'm not exactly a math guy, but that's what vectors are used for. And if you ever see what vectors look like, they've kind of got these arrows, and they usually have some values in them, right? Depending on the dimension. So that's a 5-dimensional vector. Now this kind of looks like an array. So I'll explain to you now why we're using the vector. So, the very first thing that you guys, maybe not the first thing, but in CS 135, you learned about regular arrays, right? So, we're going to start with just basic, boring example here. I always try to keep my examples fun, but every now and then they have to be boring, so I apologize. But we'll call this our integer array. And if you wanted that to be an array, what would I have to do here? Let's say I want this array to hold, say, 0, 1, 2, or 0, 2, 3, 5, and then 7. Okay, so it's got 5 total spots. My commas are all over the place. Yeah, brackets, right? Square brackets. So if I want this to be an array, I say, hey, I want it to hold 5 spots. 5 spots. Now, Arceus, Hulu Ren, you guys were kind of right as well, right? I wasn't very clear. I wasn't very clear with my. I wasn't very clear with what I was talking about. Now, if you want to actually put those values in there, that's when you pull out the curly brackets, right? And you say 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, right? So that's how we do the arrays, right? Now, this is called. I don't know if you've heard this before. This is called a static array. Does anyone know what static means in general? No, that's okay. In terms of arrays, So look, you don't make fun of me if I can't say this name, but I think that's lethargy, right? Not changing is probably the most general definition of that. Some things that are static cannot be changed. But the truth is, if we went into this array, we could change something about it. If we wanted to, we could say, hey, in this spot, I want this to be a 10 now. So not changing in terms of an array is not the best definition, but you are right. But Cherry says you can't change the size. So does Synchro. Right, so a static array means that the size does not change. So we kind of have this problem here in that we always need to know what the size is before we declare the array, which is pretty restrictive on our coding. It's pretty restrictive on the coding, right? Yeah, so RCS, you're totally right. In terms of arrays, static arrays, you can't change the size. Not changing. So the reason that we use vectors, and let me pull up in my notes here then. So up to this point, we know about static arrays. Now, later in this semester, I guess, we're going to learn about this, pointers and memory allocation and management. Now, this stuff is, I don't want to scare you, okay? It's kind of complicated. If you've ever talked to someone before about CS202, they may tell you horror stories about pointers. I assure you I'll get you through it, but this is something that we don't know yet. And in order to get a dynamic array in CS135, we need to know how to do this. Now, some CS135 instructors like to cheat, give you a little bit of a head start, and they say, hey, this is a vector. And a vector is an easy way to get a dynamic array if we don't know how to use pointers. So that's why we use the vectors, and there's only really 2 or 3 things you need to know about them, okay? How to declare a vector, how do we insert to a vector, and how do we access elements in the vector, okay? So from here on out, pretty much when we use vectors, we're not using it for math. We're going to use it for dynamic arrays. So just think that. When I say, hey, we're using vectors, we're using dynamic arrays. All right. So let's say I wanted to print, well, so we're going to kind of go by this one by one, right? So in a static array, how do we declare a static array? Well, we just did here, right? I'm kind of underlining it with the notepad. This is how do we insert to a static array? Well, I kind of showed you that there, right? In fact, there's really no inserting. Rather, we're just saying, hey, this is how big the array is. And then how do we access elements in the static array? Well, we use the brackets, right? So now we're going to answer all these questions for the vector, and they're very similar. Before I do that, I just want to say this. This is something that we do a lot. Print all elements in the array. So we'll use a for loop for that, right? You've ever seen a for loop before? Well, you could also use a while loop if you want. But I'll say, hey, for int I. Well, okay, before I do this, let me check your knowledge on this. What are valid indexes for this array? What are the valid indexes for this array? Meaning that if I wanted to print anything from this array, what are the valid indexes? Yes, 0 through 4. Exactly right. If I ever see you put a 5 in here, I'll get mad at you. Don't ever do this. Don't ever put a 5 in here, right? The valid indexes are always between 0 and the size minus 1. Okay? So this is at index 0. This is at index 1. This is at index 2. This is at index 3. And this is at index 4, right? Exactly. If you guys ever get segmentation faults in your program, likely you're putting a 5 in here. More on that later. More on that later. So if we're going to do this for loop, where do we start? Well, we start at 0, right? And say, how far do we go? Well, we'll say, hey, while I is less than 5. Now, if that confuses you, you can always say less than or equal to 4. All right, either one of those work. And what kind of step do we take every time? So every time we loop, what are we going to change, or how are we going to change I to get us closer to this 5 here? Well, we're going to just add 1, right? If you've never seen a plus plus before, you can say I is plus equal to 1. Or if that is even confusing, you can say I is equal to I plus 1. Right? Exactly. So, Ali, I hope you don't mind if I refer to you that way. Asks, can't you say less than size? Now, yes, we can, but we need to do something like this first. Now, this is just the way C++ works. This is actually, when we get to pointers, I'll explain to you exactly what this does. But you'll see later on in the vector, we can use some size thing. You know how you guys can do something like this? If you say like a string C is equal to loaf. Loaf is the name of my cat. So loaf may appear on screen sometimes, and sometimes you're able to do something like this. C.length. Now, Ali asks, is there a length int array function? There very well may be. We may have to include a library for that. And off the top of my head, I'm not very sure. So for now, we're going to stick with this. But like I said, if it's an object, you can do this. Now, like I said, you may be able to include a library. Let me see if that's even a thing. You might be very right. Let's take a look. Let's take a look-see. Yeah, those guys are always using pointers. But maybe there is a library here. So it looks like this one might work. Let's look at this one. Yeah, okay, Ali. Yeah, you're right. You see I did that? And we'll talk about what this is when we get to classes. Strings are actually objects. They're classes, and that's why we have access to this kind of function. But, I mean, you can always do something like this. It looks like you could say, what's it called? No, we're not going to do that. I'm going to confuse you guys, so we'll come back to that later. So if I wanted to go through all of these elements in the array, then I can just say, let's print them out one by one. Right, so I'll say, hey, int array located at I, and then let's say we do an end line. Okay, and that should print everything in our array, right? Why don't we go check that on Bobby real quick? So what do I do? The first thing I have to do is I have to save this. What did I do? I said Control S. If you guys don't do shortcuts, you just come here and file save, right? And then you pull up either your FileZilla or your MobaX. Go find wherever your file is. Mine's here. I'll pull it over here. I'll wait for it to finish uploading. And then I'll compile it. And then I'll /a.out. And here's our array, right? First it printed that 0, and then the 2, and then the 3, then the 5, then the 7. Except the 5 became a 10, right, because I had changed it. So now we'll do the vector part. So how do we declare a vector? Well, let's look at our notes here. That is going to be like this. Vector of some type. Variable name, we'll call it var name. Just like that. So let's give it a shot here. Now, really, we're really cheating as computer science instructors, as C++ instructors, by showing you this. Because some of you might be looking at this thing going, what the heck is that thing? So in the case of an int array, if I wanted a vector of ints, I would have to do this. And you're probably going, what the heck is that thing? Why are we doing this? Well, I'm not going to explain it yet, but I will tell you that we will get to that later in the semester when we talk about templates. But basically, this allows us to specify what type the array is going to hold for us. So that's how we declare it. Can anyone tell me if I wanted a vector of strings, what it would look like? Let's say we called it string vector. I just want to confirm that what I said made sense. If I wanted something called string vector and I wanted it to be a vector of strings, what would I put before this? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys understood. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right? If I wanted this to be a string vector, say, hey, I want an array of strings, I'll do that. Okay? Exactly. So now that you get that, that's how we do it. That's how we declare our stuff. So whatever the type is, you're going to put it in here. Now, what's the next thing? The next thing is how do we insert? All right? So we have a fun function. It's called whatever the array is. Let's say var name dot push back, and then whatever our item is. So let me give you a nice example here in VS Code. If I wanted to add these same, let me copy it. I wanted to add these same elements to our int vector. I will say int vector dot push back, and then I'll say 0. Now what does this do? This says put 0 in the back of the array. So that's like insert. It would be better if it's called insert, but this is a vector, and vectors were not meant to be used as arrays, right? So we're going to be using this thing called pushback. That's so far the only thing that you need to know from this, and you need to remember it. So Cherry asks, is there a way to put all of it at once? Now there may be, but if we had it all at once, we might as well just do it this way. Now, so I'll show you why we use the vectors. And it's kind of because during the runtime, we'll kind of encounter some more variables to put in that array. But if we did have it all at once, we would either probably call pushback a whole bunch of times. We could call a constructor, which I won't get into yet. Cherry, I say more on that later. For now, we're just going to stick with this one. Arceus asks, do we use a for loop for vectors too? Yes, we do. That's next. So pushback is looping through the vector and changing the values for you. So that's not correct. I'm glad you guys are asking these questions because we need to do that. I'm very glad that you're asking these questions. So at this point, this array is empty. So as soon as we declare it, it's empty. There's nothing in there. So as I'm explaining this to you, let me show you how we access the elements, just so I don't confuse you. We do it exactly the same way that we do it with regular arrays with the brackets. var name index. So I'll show you exactly how this works. So I'm actually going to copy this thing here. And there's actually one more thing that we need to know about vectors. As Ali mentioned before, how do we get the size? Well, that's easy. We'll say var name dot size. Yeah, so you guys have some great questions here. Let me show you exactly how this works. So right now this array is totally empty. There's nothing in it. And so in fact, if I want to print everything out that's inside of this array right now, I'm going to do it this way. Okay? So what do I say? For starting at 0, from I until it's less than the size of the vector, and then I is equal to I plus 1. I don't do it this way very much, so I'm going to stick with I plus plus. And then I'm going to say, hey, let's see out this int vector, right? And I say, hey, this is how we access it with the brackets, the exact same way. So right now, can anyone tell me what we'll print? Magum asks, does vector regard the size of the vector in the same way the array does? As in the max index is size minus 1. That is 100% correct. For both vectors and arrays, the max index is always size minus 1. TWG asks, do we need to know pop back right now? No, we don't. But we can go over that later. Cherry says the values, right? But Lethargy says if there's nothing in it, nothing will print, right? That's correct. So notice that the int vector size is going to be 0. There's nothing in it. So we'll say for I is equal to 0, is 0 less than 0? Well, that's false, right? 0 is not less than 0. So in fact, we won't execute this body at all. We won't execute this body at all. So nothing will print. But then let's say I do it again. Let me put some stuff here. So now, let's say I insert an element, I push back 0. So now what will we see in the print screen? And after we do this, the array looks like this, right? Now it's like an array, it's got a 0 in it. Now I'll do it again. Let's say we add something else. Let's say 12. Okay, so Ali says an infinite loop of zeros. So let's kind of look at this part here. Oop, this is not SQL. So what we're going to do is we're going to push back this 0. So now the 0 goes into the back of the array. Our array was empty before. Kind of look like this. So where is the back of the array? It's going to be there, right? Yeah, actually that's great. If I put this push back inside the for loop, there may be a big problem. There may be a big problem. But we're going to put it here. So now the size of the vector is 1, right? So we'll say for I is equal to 0. I is less than 1. Is that true? Yes, it is. So it will print whatever is located at the 0th index, the first item, and that's going to be 0. So we'll see the 0. And then I increments to 1. Now is I less than 1? No, it's not, so we'll move on. So then let's say we inserted 12. So now our array looks like this, 0, 12. Does that make sense? And so now we'll see 0, 12. And we're kind of running out of time here in class, so I'll do one more and we'll run it again just to show you kind of how this is working. And in that assignment, yeah, I guess I'll kind of pull it up real quick. I will never try to go over class time. I know that we've all got things to do, so we'll kind of move on. We'll come back to it tomorrow. It's nice that we have class every day because you'll remember what I tell you, hopefully. And we don't have to wait weeks to get back to things. So it's actually totally okay that I push things back. We did cover a lot today anyway. Yeah, Lethargy asks, pushback is adding a value to the end of the vector. That's exactly it. It's putting it in the back. putting it in the back. Yeah, Ali, let's try that real quick. What do you say? Whoops. And I will update that syllabus, but let's see if you can get in there right now. And thank you. I'm going to call you Z. I hope you're okay with that. Thank you, Z. I know we've all got our usernames, right? And we've all got our usernames. It's totally fine. So we'll compile this. We'll ./a.out. Now there's a bunch of stuff going on here, right? So right here after the 7, I'll kind of pull open the code and show you. Let me see here. I want to make sure I see my screen. Yeah, perhaps you are getting invalid. We can work on that after class. I'll stay in the chat here for a little bit and see if I can help you out here. But first, here we declared an empty array, right? And then I said, let's print everything that's in that array. So that happens right after this 7, and nothing prints. So then I insert my element here, and I put a 0 in there, and then we try a for loop again. Notice that it's there. We insert an element, and now we see a 0. And then we insert our next element, right? That's a 12. I put it in the back of the array. And then I loop through everything again, right? So now we see the 0 and we see the 12. And then lastly, I insert this number 3. I put it in the back of the array, and then I'll loop through the array, right? So I see that 0 again, I see that 12 again, and then I finally see the 3. So with that, I'm going to wrap up class for today. Does anyone have any more questions just about the vectors? Maybe about connecting to Bobby, perhaps about the syllabus or editors, coding editors. Please let me know. Okay, so Amalgam asks, do I make the VODs available from these sessions? Yes, I do make the VODs available, and I also upload them to YouTube. So even though you can check, the VODs only stay up for maybe 14 days, on the YouTube they'll be there permanently. So you can always go back and look at them. I'll upload it right after class today. RCS asks, are we getting 2 assignments this week? That would be correct. So kind of what's going to happen here is, let's look at the syllabus. We're going to talk about classes, data abstraction, and function overloading, and right after we finish, probably while we talk about that, I'll make that assignment available. So there will be 2. There's one on the CS 135 review, and there will be one later this week on classes. Z asks, is there any input? Yes, there is. I really should have talked about that. So you can read it. I'll really have to go over it tomorrow, but if you don't have anything going on right now, I'll just hang out and show you real quick. I gotta find my web campus. That's not my web campus. Well, I don't need my web campus. So you can download it there if you want on web campus, but you're gonna have this assignment, and it's going to have 3 folders. You have main. Now main is a skeleton code. Okay, if you have to go, I'll go over this tomorrow, okay? And let me see if I can ask. Well, to answer your question, Z, yes, there is. If you look in the data files, you'll see that we have got these input files here. So they're there. Yeah, no problem, Synchro. I'll see you tomorrow. Can I DMCA claim the VODs on your Twitch? I'm not sure about that. Please don't try. Magam says to use CodeGrade. The truth is, Magam, I really don't like CodeGrade. I may be working on it a little bit this semester, but truth is, I like to see your code with my own eyes. I don't really trust the code grade, so I'm not going to be using that. I hope it doesn't upset you. Lil Attacker asks, when do you grade the assignments? I think I've worked out there with Christine, that she'll be grading on Tuesday and Wednesday. So all of the grades they'll be graded all at once. And so you won't get feedback until after the due date. So if you have confusion, you need to talk to me before the due date. Like if you have some problem with your program, you need to talk to me before the due date. All of the assignments are graded at once, and you'll get them back within a week, okay? Flyer says the data files folder is empty, so let me fix that for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll fix that for you right now. Code grade is awful. Are you going to upload the notes in main? Yes, I will. So PMARS, I'll show you that right now. Leave student view. Let me see here. So I'll come in here. Here's where everything goes. I'll go to Files. I will go to Class Code. I'm going to say, hey, today we had a CS135 review. It was on 2021-06-07 CS135 review. And in this folder, I will come here. I will find wherever I was saving my stuff. And I'll say, hey, you get main. And I'll also upload the notes here as well as this fun little picture. So they all go there. Oh, thank you, Z. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I'm kind of a goober, I told you. I mess things up all the time, so let me do that. And thank you for pointing it out to me. Always call me out on my crap, okay? So that'll take a little bit. Events is kind of a big file. Yep. All right, so that looks like I got everything. So I'll go over the assignment first thing tomorrow, okay? So you're welcome to go. You're welcome to get started on it, okay? We still got like about a week or so to do it, a little less than. So get started if you want. Ask me questions. The Discord is ready to go. So ask me questions if you need. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for coming to class. Thank you for asking questions. Check Web Campus, check YouTube. Thanks for being in my class. I'll see you guys all later. And office hours. I'll be in office hours at 1 p.m. So if you want to come say hi, you're welcome to. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.